Within minutes, timelines erupted as the internet was jolted awake by a headline no one saw coming. Fans were stunned. Emotions surged. Once again, the reality television space found itself sharply divided. Tamar Braxton's recent comments appeared to hint at a deeply personal conflict involving Mendeecees. According to reports circulating online, the rumors stretched far beyond what viewers thought they already understood. None of the claims have been confirmed. Still, the conversation alone proved powerful enough to shift the narrative entirely. As Tamar's words were replayed and dissected, a heated debate emerged about what was truly unfolding behind the scenes. Gossip blogs and reaction channels noted the gravity in her delivery. Viewers described her tone as deliberate, her pauses heavy with meaning. Fans began questioning why she repeatedly emphasized choice, resistance, and resolve, why she stressed staying composed, and why she spoke so often about wanting something for herself despite outside opinions. At that moment, the story took a turn. Online speculation suggested Tamar might have been responding to pressure. There were no direct accusations or confirmations, only expressions rooted in emotional strain. According to circulating interpretations, her remarks alluded to a disagreement involving a pregnancy, where she allegedly refused to yield and chose to move forward on her own terms. Suddenly, the discussion moved beyond gossip. It became about power, autonomy, and control. Then came the detail that truly ignited fan spaces. Tamar's words implied she wanted the baby to carry Mendeecees' name. Based on how viewers interpreted the clips, many felt this added an entirely new layer to the story. Reactions flooded social media. Some called it a sign of emotional strength. Others viewed it as heartbreaking defiance. Supporters rushed to defend Mendeecees, while reminding audiences that interpretation does not equal proof. Families of opinion split overnight. Reaction videos went viral. Every phrase was slowed down, every expression scrutinized, every pause analyzed. The conversation began to exist independently of the facts. Despite no confirmation, fans kept asking the same question. Were these simply emotional reflections, or was Tamar subtly unveiling a much larger truth without ever stating it outright? In reality television, silence often speaks louder than words. And tonight's discussion centers on why this moment exploded, how the speculation gained traction, and why it refuses to fade. No accusations were made at the outset. Interpretation led the way. Old clips resurfaced, past remarks were re-examined, and suddenly Tamar's words carried a different weight. Her tone suggested resistance rather than agreement, inner conflict rather than mutual decision. Commentators noted that while gossip sites framed the situation carefully as discussion rather than confirmation, that distinction did little to slow public reaction. Fans weren't responding to verified facts, but to what felt implied. Viewers highlighted Tamar's statements about standing firm in her values and knowing what she wanted, even when others disagreed. Those lines became the centerpiece of debate. Reaction channels replayed moments repeatedly, pausing mid-sentence and rewinding. When she spoke about pressure, who was it coming from? Why did choice suddenly matter so much? And why did those words feel sharper now than when she first said them? The timing alone fueled speculation, especially when blogs began loosely connecting her remarks to Mendeecees without concrete evidence. Sides formed almost instantly, and tensions rose quickly. Some argued Tamar was simply expressing personal empowerment, and that reading anything more into it was irresponsible. Others believed the emotional weight in her delivery pointed to turmoil beyond internal reflection. That divide shaped the early narrative. One side called it empowerment, the other called it resistance. Neither side had proof, yet both felt convinced by what they heard. As the discussion expanded, whispers grew that Tamar may have been referencing a disagreement over pregnancy decisions. Again, language remained cautious, filled with words like allegedly and reportedly. But even that restraint failed to contain the fallout. Fans reacted to the idea itself rather than its confirmation. Given the public stature of those involved, the notion of someone feeling pressured into an unwanted decision struck a nerve. Family dynamics became part of the conversation, at least through interpretation. Defenders of Mendeecees argued the rumors were unfair and harmful, pointing out that pressure can come from many sources, including media scrutiny, career stress, and personal anxiety. Others countered that repeatedly emphasizing refusal and determination suggested resistance to an external force. Public opinion fractured not because of what was said, but because of what remained unsaid. Dialogue clips were dissected further. Fans focused on moments when Tamar hesitated, softened her voice, or carefully chose her words. Some believed she was protecting someone. Others thought she was protecting herself. That uncertainty became the engine driving the story forward. The debate didn't require proof. Even ambiguity was enough. Then another detail intensified the discourse. Viewers zeroed in on Tamar mentioning her desire for the baby to have Mendeecees' name. Some saw it as hope for unity. Others interpreted it as a declaration of intent despite opposition. Blogs highlighted the moment while acknowledging that interpretations varied widely. Timelines stayed flooded. Fans argued over whether insisting on a name symbolized resistance, attachment, or confidence. The meaning shifted depending on perspective. Reaction videos leaned heavily into emotion rather than evidence. Creators discussed how public figures often rely on indirect language when navigating sensitive topics. They reminded viewers that silence and precision can be forms of self-protection, while also validating why the situation felt unsettling. Control, choice, and pregnancy are deeply personal matters, and even the suggestion of conflict around them is enough to provoke strong emotional reactions. The narrative felt incomplete due to the lack of clarity, a silence that only intensified curiosity without a single word being spoken. Friends and industry peers were pulled into speculation. Fans tracked who reacted positively to posts, who stayed quiet, and who avoided the topic altogether. Every action was read as a message. Some viewed silence as strategy, while others interpreted it as discomfort. What mattered more than accuracy was how widely these interpretations spread. Perception shaped the story faster than facts ever could. Once the narrative took hold, media coverage became measured yet charged. Articles acknowledged the emotional impact of the discussion, while repeatedly emphasizing that no claims had been confirmed. Rather than dissecting explicit statements from Tamar, writers focused on how she framed her experience. That approach allowed the story to circulate without definitive language, keeping it alive through implication. Even as readers were reminded that this remained commentary, not confirmation, the emotional response refused to fade. Passionate fans continued to debate whether the conversation was overdue or whether Mendeecees was being unfairly targeted. Some argued that men in influential positions are often judged more by perceived intent than actual behavior. Others believed that dismissing emotional signals only reinforces silence. These opposing viewpoints kept comment sections active, even in the absence of new information. Each new post reignited the discussion. At the center of it all remained Tamar's words. Not the allegation she never made, but the way she expressed herself. Supporters argued that her repeated emphasis on refusal signaled autonomy. Critics of the rumors warned against confusing self-agency with accusation. Despite drawing different conclusions, both sides insisted they were protecting her narrative. That contradiction became the core of the conversation as time passed. Gradually, the story began to feel larger than the individuals involved. It touched on broader themes of personal autonomy, interpretation, and how easily narratives form when information is incomplete. Fans shared their own experiences, recognizing language that suggested determination or pressure. While these stories pulled the conversation further from verifiable facts, they carried emotional resonance. It wasn't evidence driving the reaction, but relatability. People heard what aligned with their own beliefs and experiences. Tamar's comments validated some listeners, while others were unsettled by how quickly suggestion turned into assumption. With each repost and reaction video, perspectives drifted further apart. The discussion settled into a familiar rhythm. By this stage, there were still no confirmations or denials, only ongoing interpretation. Yet that was enough to sustain attention. Fans continued to question why these remarks felt heavier now, and why the discussion carried a different tone. Many pointed to timing, noting how recent commentary reshaped context without introducing new facts. Ultimately, emotion, not precision, defined this early chapter. The response wasn't rooted in exactly what Tamar said, but in how her words made people feel. In the world of reality TV discourse, that line often blurs. As the story progressed, perception began to outweigh evidence. Conversation took on momentum of its own, setting the stage for deeper scrutiny. Attention slowly shifted from the content of Tamar's remarks to why they resonated so strongly in this moment. Commentators emphasized how context alters meaning. Statements once seen as reflective but ordinary were now being viewed through a sharper lens. With public opinion evolving, fans weren't just listening anymore. They were searching for meaning between lines, intent behind phrasing, and signals hidden in tone. Online coverage highlighted that Tamar's presentation mattered more than making any explicit claim. Viewers focused on moments where she spoke about choosing for herself despite opposition and holding firm to what mattered most. Those lines became emotional anchors. To some, her words sounded like empowerment. To others, they reflected struggle. The divide in interpretation became impossible to ignore. Reaction channels amplified the split by replaying clips and asking hypothetical questions instead of making accusations. What if she was describing pressure without naming its source? What if silence was a form of self-protection? What if she was simply recounting an emotionally difficult period without implicating anyone else? Each question opened a new path for speculation, none requiring proof to feel compelling. As supporters of both Tamar and Mendeecees grew more vocal, emotions intensified. Defenders cautioned against assigning intent based solely on tone, arguing that fear and stress can exist without external coercion. Others countered that emotional cues are often dismissed when people are pressured into silence. At this stage, facts were no longer the central dispute. The conflict revolved around personal experience and belief. Public opinion fractured once again. Fans waited for clarity, but none came. No explanations, no firm denials, no confirmations. Online, silence became its own form of communication. Some saw it as restraint. Others saw it as avoidance. Both interpretations gained traction despite lacking verification. Entertainment blogs and commentary platforms chose their language carefully. Terms like suggested, declined, and implied appeared alongside disclaimers stressing that these were interpretations, not established facts. Yet even with cautious wording, the conversation continued to grow, driven less by certainty and more by how deeply the moment resonated. Headlines moved fast, spreading far and wide within hours. The emotional takeaway often lingered longer with readers than any disclaimer attached to it. Once a story gains momentum, nuance struggles to keep pace. Discussion surrounding the baby's name intensified the emotional weight. Despite alleged disagreements, fans debated what it meant for Tamar to want the child to carry Mendeecees' name. Some interpreted it as a desire for unity or acceptance. Others viewed it as a firm declaration of connection, depending on perspective. That single detail came to represent either hope or defiance in conversations about parenthood, autonomy, and strength. Friends and supporters added to the discourse indirectly. Even unrelated posts were pulled into the narrative and treated as symbolic clues. When nothing is stated outright, the internet has a way of assigning meaning anyway. Every post became potential context. Every quote was treated like a missing piece. Reaction videos grew longer and more reflective. Creators discussed how public figures often speak carefully when navigating sensitive topics, reminding audiences that words can carry weight without making accusations. At the same time, they acknowledged the discomfort surrounding the situation. Even without proof, the idea that someone might feel pressured during such an intimate experience struck a nerve. The conversation expanded beyond the individuals involved. Fans debated how power dynamics can surface within private relationships, especially when fame and public image are factors. Others pushed back, warning that projecting those dynamics without evidence can be damaging. Both sides insisted they were arguing in the name of fairness. Days passed, yet the debate remained unsettled. Even neutral observers were pulled in by the intensity of the reactions. At this point, the narrative became less about concrete events and more about interpretation. How words are received, how timing reshapes meaning, and how silence invites assumption. Media coverage mirrored that tension. Articles explored why the topic resonated so strongly, while stressing that no formal accusations had been made. Instead of examining actions, writers analyzed tone, phrasing, and emotional delivery. This approach prevented the story from becoming definitive, leaving audiences to draw their own conclusions. Perception continued to be shaped by Mendeecees' absence from the conversation. Supporters argued that staying silent was the responsible choice amid speculation. Critics countered that addressing rumors head-on could stop them from spreading. The coexistence of both views deepened polarization. Ambiguity allowed each side to reinforce its own stance. Tamar remained central, not because of new statements, but because past remarks were constantly revisited. Her words became a mirror. Viewers projected their own experiences onto them, whether they saw pressure, resilience, or misunderstanding. That personal connection gave the story emotional staying power. The divide between evidence and empathy widened. Some believed emotional truth mattered even without verification. Others insisted that speculation should end in the absence of proof. Neither side persuaded the other. Engagement was fueled by the debate itself. As the story evolved, it became clear that momentum defined this phase. Once a narrative reaches this level of emotional investment, it no longer needs new information to survive. Interpretation fuels reaction. Reaction drives coverage. Coverage invites more interpretation. The cycle sustains itself. What began as commentary on language transformed into a broader discussion about how narratives take shape in real time. The environment surrounding Tamar's words had shifted, even though the words themselves had not. Meaning changed through context, timing, and collective emotion rather than new facts. That shift marked a turning point in public awareness. As interest grew, the question evolved from whether confirmation would arrive to whether confirmation was even necessary for the story to continue. With the narrative fully in motion, patience gave way to assumption. Fans stopped waiting for explanations and began layering emotion onto speculation to create meaning in the moment. Videos were no longer viewed as context but as validation for pre-existing beliefs. The story entered a more volatile stage. Online debates intensified. Tamar's supporters argued that her words reflected personal experience, not insinuation. They maintained that her firmness mattered regardless of who was involved. Others responded that confidence does not automatically signal outside pressure. They warned against turning heartfelt expression into implied blame. Neither side relented. Emotions ran high, and nuance was often lost in the noise. Language used by gossip pages carried increasing influence. Even with disclaimers, phrases like urged, refused, and stood her ground carried emotional force. Suggestion traveled faster than clarification. By the time explanations circulated, opinions were already set. Social media moved too quickly for reflection. Fans began assembling timelines, comparing appearances, interviews, and dates in search of alignment or contradiction. Seemingly unrelated moments were woven together to form a larger narrative. Pause here. A guarded expression there. Every detail was treated as intentional, reinforcing the belief that nothing was accidental. In such a heightened atmosphere, it became increasingly difficult to maintain the idea that someone could choose their words carefully without any deeper implication. The discussion around the baby's name continued to intensify emotional interpretation. Some viewers believed it reflected Tamar's desire for security and acknowledgement. Others disagreed entirely. Supporters and friends on both sides attempted to redirect the conversation. Some posted reminders about respecting privacy and avoiding speculation. Others shared messages centered on autonomy and empowerment. Even those efforts were folded into the narrative, interpreted as subtle endorsements or quiet rebuttals. Nothing existed independently anymore. Reaction videos captured this complexity. Creators recognized the sensitivity of the subject and spoke with increased restraint. Many reminded audiences that commentary does not equal confirmation, yet they continue to analyze tone and delivery. They acknowledge that emotional cues can matter even without direct statements, while stopping short of accusation. That careful balance kept viewers engaged as the discussion expanded. The conversation soon intersected with broader debates around reproductive autonomy. Viewers shared personal experiences to illustrate how pressure can be invisible to outsiders. Others spoke about being misunderstood when expressing fear or uncertainty. These stories added emotional depth while blurring the line between empathy and projection. As the dialogue grew more personal, it became harder to separate one situation from another. Mendeecees' silence continued to define his presence in the narrative. Interpretations of his quiet varied widely. Supporters argued that responding would legitimize speculation. Critics claimed that addressing the rumors could defuse them. The constant circulation of both viewpoints deepened the divide. Audiences projected their own beliefs onto the blank space left by silence. At this stage, media coverage shifted focus from events to reactions. Articles examined the emotional impact of the story, the escalation of debate, and fan response. This allowed outlets to cover the controversy without asserting facts. The conversation itself became the story, rather than any confirmed action. Public opinion around the family fractured once again. Some fans called for compassion and restraint, expressing concern for everyone involved. Others demanded accountability, even if it came in the form of clarification. Comment sections reflected that split, with empathy and suspicion existing side by side but rarely intersecting. The speed at which certainty formed without evidence became increasingly noticeable. Opposing interpretations felt wrong, rather than simply different once viewers settled on what Tamar's words meant to them. That rigidity intensified conflict. Accusations of bias and insensitivity flew in both directions as debates heated up. The emotional response to Tamar's words nearly overshadowed the words themselves. This pattern is familiar in reality television culture. Media analysts note that audiences are conditioned to search for hidden meaning and read between the lines. When public figures speak cautiously, viewers often assume something is being concealed. Those expectations shape interpretation long before facts enter the conversation. As days passed, the story settled into a steady rhythm. Engagement remained high despite the absence of new information. Every repost sparked renewed debate. Each reaction video generated further commentary. Part of the appeal was the lack of resolution. Unanswered questions kept people watching. Tamar's remarks remained the anchor, not because they changed, but because the context around them did. What once sounded reflective now felt charged. Timing altered perception without altering content, illustrating how narratives can evolve without new events. Some viewers began to express fatigue, questioning how long unverified speculation could persist. Others argued that discussion itself has value, especially around sensitive issues. Both viewpoints gained traction, adding another layer to the discourse. The line between commentary and conclusion grew increasingly blurred. Emotional framing guided interpretation, and even with disclaimers in place, feeling often outweighed caution. The narrative endured through resonance rather than reality. By this point, it functioned as a mirror reflecting the audience's own experiences and values. Those who sensed pressure in Tamar's words felt validated. Those who rejected that idea felt compelled to defend against what they viewed as an unfair implication. The divide became more about perspective than truth. As time went on, polarization defined this phase. Skepticism competed with empathy. Expectation clashed with silence. Restraint stood opposed to interpretation. The audience remained captivated not by clarity, but by the growing emotional gravity of the story. Eventually, interpretation began to give way to anticipation. Fans started speculating about what might come next rather than revisiting what had already been said. Would someone speak out? Would there be clarification? Or would silence allow the narrative to continue unchecked? Even without new material, suspense kept the story alive. That tension was visible across online spaces. Comment sections became arenas for projecting outcomes instead of waiting for information. Some believed Tamar would eventually offer a more direct explanation. Others felt her words were meant to stand on their own, and that no clarification was coming. That uncertainty deepened emotional investment. Sides were chosen based on perceived intent rather than facts. During this stage, reaction content subtly shifted tone. Creators began discussing the cost of public storytelling and how control over meaning disappears once words enter the public sphere. Tamar's remarks were no longer solely hers. They belonged to the audience, shaped by emotion, bias, and personal experience. Loss of control emerged as an underlying theme throughout coverage. Fans continued their meticulous focus on language. They revisited words like refusal and determination, debating whether they signaled inner conflict or private disagreement. Some argued that refusal implies an external request. Others countered that rejecting fear or doubt can also be a form of refusal. The debate persisted, fueled not by answers, but by interpretation. The dispute remained unresolved, because both interpretations continued to feel credible. Throughout the discussion, the baby's name functioned as a powerful symbol rather than a concrete detail. Supporters viewed it as an expression of dignity and connection, while skeptics dismissed it as a detail stretched beyond its intent. Still, its repeated appearance across blogs and reaction videos underscored how central it had become to the narrative. In moments like this, symbolism often outweighs verification. As time passed, unease grew around how stories take shape without evidence. Many viewers were unsettled by how implication began to resemble accusation. Some warned that even direct clarification might not undo the damage once a narrative settles into public consciousness. Others pushed back, arguing that conversations about autonomy and pressure should not be silenced simply because they are uncomfortable. That tension exposed a deeper disagreement over responsibility and storytelling. Media coverage leaned more heavily toward analyzing reactions rather than tracing origins. Articles focused on cultural relevance, fan response, and the widening divide in opinion. This approach allowed the narrative to continue circulating without introducing new claims. Attention shifted from what actually occurred to what people believed might have occurred, and why that belief mattered. Mendeecees' presence remained defined by absence. Supporters continued to frame silence as self-protection rather than admission. Critics argued that confronting speculation could prevent misunderstanding. Neither position yielded ground. The resulting stalemate reinforced this phase of the conversation, allowing both perspectives to coexist without resolution. Tamar, meanwhile, was increasingly framed through empathy. Across viewpoints, many fans expressed concern for her emotional well-being, noting how difficult it must be to have deeply personal comments examined repeatedly. Others worried that assumption was replacing compassion. That contrast highlighted how quickly care can turn into certainty in online spaces. The discussion also prompted broader reflection. Conversations expanded to how women's personal experiences are interpreted publicly. Some argued that subtle language is often the safest way to express disagreement. Others cautioned against assigning hidden meaning that unfairly implicates others. Because both positions were rooted in lived experience, consensus proved elusive. As engagement continued, the debate became cyclical. Each resurfaced clip or new reaction video brought brief lulls followed by renewed spikes of attention. The same arguments resurfaced, rarely offering new insight but reinforcing existing beliefs. Repetition did not clarify confusion, it deepened it. Some fans began questioning their own reactions, wondering whether they were responding to the framing of the story rather than the words themselves. These moments of reflection appeared in longer comment threads, though they were often drowned out by firmer opinions. Uncertainty travels more slowly than conviction. Analysts noted that this pattern is common when coverage involves intimate subject matter. Emotion accelerates interpretation. Audiences gravitate toward narratives that validate their strongest feelings. Tamar's words became a vessel for that process, with the same phrases carrying different meanings for different listeners. One fact remained unchanged throughout it all. No claim was ever confirmed. No clear accusation was made. Everything existed within the realm of belief, emotion, and commentary. Yet that space proved resilient enough to sustain weeks of debate and scrutiny. By this stage, the story had expanded far beyond its original context. It became a case study in how narratives form, how silence is interpreted, and how quickly public opinion can harden around limited information. The ideas spread beyond the individuals involved, even as they remained at the center. Some viewers said they wanted clarity, not confirmation. Others believed the conversation itself was the point and that closure might never arrive. Together, these perspectives revealed a defining trait of reality television culture. Audiences are often more engaged by interpretation than by resolution.